Good morning, students. Welcome back to Zoology webinars. In the previous class, we dealt with chapters of digestive and excretory system of human anatomy and physiology. Let us start a new chapter in today's session. I have few questions to ask you all. If you know the answers, please write it in chat box. Let us start the questioning. Yes. Children, from where do we get food? Yes. From nature? Yes. From plants or animals? And the plants will be the main source of food, isn't it? Okay. What are the materials required by the plants to prepare food? Water? Yes. Carbon dioxide and sunlight. Yes, you all are right. Because since childhood, we'll be learning about what is the process of photosynthesis, where the plants can prepare their own food, isn't it? Yes, with the water and carbon dioxide in the presence of sunlight, plants can prepare their own food. So, what is the end product of the photosynthesis? It is nothing but starch or glucose. So, do you all know the formula? Yes, it is C6H12, isn't it? So I think you all are getting confused whether it is in a botany class or a zoology class, isn't it? No, it is a zoology class. Okay, let me be more clear. What I want to convey is now, whatever we take or consume from the nature should be given back, isn't it? Otherwise, we'll become fat, isn't it? It's a cinematic dialogue, isn't it? But it is true in nature. In nature, many biogeochemical cycles will happen so that the system are maintained in the nature itself. The system will take care, the nature will take care its own way, isn't it? But when we talk about this carbon dioxide and water and coming together in another, what we generally in biological terms we call it as constructive, isn't it? Synthesizing, isn't it? So there are many reactions in our body. It may be anabolic or catabolic, isn't it? So plants also prepare in the anabolic way the glucose, isn't it? So once we consume the glucose, it should be broken down, isn't it? So this happens in our body. And again, from the glucose, carbon dioxide and water is again given back to nature. So this happens in our body. So which system in our body does this work? When it happens throughout the life of us or when it happens. So what are the benefits of this process in our system? So let us learn today about all these things in detail. Okay, today we have Mrs. Prasanna Kumari, PGT Munagala, from Suryapet district. Okay, Prasanna ma'am, good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Yes, I welcome Prasanna ma'am. And please, madam, please continue the session.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Good morning, students. Welcome back to our zoology session. And after a long gap, I am again interacting with you all people. It's very good to interact with you. Before starting my topic, just now we have seen a very good, pretty well introduction by our zoology ma'am, Vijayalakshmi ma'am. Now I would like to ask you a few questions. Where do living organisms get energy from? And what is the reason why the organisms must get energy? Because every living organism tends to survive, and for their survival they need energy. That energy it must be continuously supplied to each and every cell to carry out various metabolic activities. So from where these living organisms are getting energy from? Of course, they get energy from the food materials which the animals are taking. What is the fate of the food material which we eat? Absolutely, The food materials will be broken down into simple and absorbable substances, and these substances are transported to each and every cell. What is happening after transporting to the cells? Yes, those digested food materials are converting into energy, and the process is called oxidation. So all the micromolecules such as glucose, amino acids and fatty acids are undergoing a process called oxidation. So this oxidation, what is the reason for oxidation? Why organisms they need energy, and why these food molecules must undergo this oxidation process? Here in this image you can see the digested substances are continuously transported to the cells for the production of energy. So what is happening in between these two reactions? So once the food materials or digested substances are continuously supplying to the cells, here oxygen plays an important role. So this oxygen is added to the digested food material to convert them into energy. So digested food materials are oxidized to form energy within the cells. So meanwhile, as the oxygen is continuously supplied to the cells for the formation of energy, another dangerous gas or substance is produced in the cell, that is carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide, if it remains in the cell, it dissolves in water and forms into an acid called carbonic acid, which is a very dangerous substance that leads to threatening to the life of an organism. That's why this continuous formation of carbon dioxide must be eliminated out. Means oxygen is continuously supplied for the conversion of digested food materials into energy, and thus the carbon dioxide is formed. In supplying of oxygen and removal of carbon dioxide is taking place during oxidation of the food material. Now tell me, by which process these digested food materials get oxidized? So which process is enabling us to supply oxygen for the digested food materials? Very good, it is none other than respiration. So respiration is a process which helps in continuous supply of oxygen to the cells for the oxidation of food material, which in turn convert into energy. So here in this you can see as the anabolic process. Digestion is an anabolic process where simple molecules are formed which are transported to the cells. Once the digested food materials are transported to the cell, there in the presence of oxygen, those digested substances are converting into energy. But that energy is taking place in special cell organelles. Already you have came across with this in your 10th class. They are nothing but mitochondria. Mitochondria plays an important role in the formation of energy, that is they help in oxidation of the food material. And in turn carbon dioxide is formed which is eliminated out of the body. So what is respiration? Respiration is a catabolic process of releasing energy mostly by the oxidation of foods. It is a vital feature of life. Vital feature, you all know that it is an important feature of life. So today's our topic is breathing and of gases. Simply we can say it is respiration. So respiration is calorie burner and energy provider. Let me ask you, what is respiration again? Just now we have seen that respiration is a catabolic process. Exactly what is mean by respiration? So most of us will say respiration is nothing but taking oxygen and releasing carbon dioxide. This is a basic definition, basic concept we know regarding respiration, that is taking oxygen and releasing carbon dioxide. So what is the origin of this word respiration? The word respiration is derived from Latin language which means breathe out. So the Latin term respirare, which means breathe out. So most of the scientists, different authors have different opinions and they have given different definitions regarding breathing. So just now we have seen in Latin word, respiration means breathe out. So that breathe out is only the process in respiration? No. First it is occurring, breathe in, then after breathe out. So this breathe in and breathe out together called breathing. Breathing is the process of air is inhaled, the process through which air is inhaled into lungs and exhaled out of the lungs. Simultaneously, we are discussing two terms over here. One is air is inhaled into the lungs and exhaled out of the lungs. What happens if only inhalation occurs but not expiration or exhalation? What happens? Yes, absolutely. If only inhalation occurs and there is no exhalation or expiration, the organism is said to be expired. What is that? Organism is said to be expired if exhalation does not occur. And this inhalation and exhalation process is, according to other authors, the different authors gave different terms. That is, breathing is also called gaseous exchange. Gaseous exchange occurs by external respiration or ventilation because the entry of oxygen and exit of carbon dioxide happens at places other than energy releasing sites. In the previous image we have seen, here you can see there are different sites within the cells. Means as the food materials are entering or transported to each and every cell, oxygen is supplied. Means there's only oxygen, intaking of oxygen, releasing of carbon dioxide from the special organs. It only called external respiration or breathing. Why it is not completely the cellular respiration? Means this exchange of gases takes place or oxidation of food materials takes place at certain sites within the cells. Okay, that's why gas exchange is simply external respiration or ventilation. Why this is called external respiration or ventilation? Because the entry of oxygen and exit of carbon dioxide happens at places other than the energy releasing sites. They are nothing but mitochondria. More accurately, whenever you go to any uh, higher education or any area, first what you have to remember, the accurate definition of respiration is the process leading to and including the chemical breakdown of food materials to provide energy. Respiration is nothing but it is chemical breakdown of materials to provide energy for life. This energy is only for conducting or undergoing different life activities. That's why this energy is provided for the life of an organism, and that important or vital process is called respiration. But this chemical breakdown, where it is occurring, the chemical breakdown always occurs inside each and every living cell. That's why the respiration is mostly called internal respiration or cellular respiration. The final stage of respiration is nothing but oxidation or chemical breakdown of food material inside each and every living cell. Hence it is called internal respiration or cellular respiration. Already you have came across with this cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is of two types. One is anaerobic respiration and aerobic respiration. We already came across with these terms in your 10th class. Anaerobic respiration means it is the respiration that occurs in the absence of oxygen. Rather to say in the absence of oxygen, we can also say at lower supply of oxygen. When oxygen is not supplied properly, then the process is called anaerobic respiration. What is the ultimate result of this anaerobic respiration? Anaerobic respiration yields less energy. Why it is yielding less energy? Because due to low supply of oxygen, the incomplete breakdown of organic molecules takes place. Because of this incomplete breakdown of organic molecules, energy is yielded very less, and that process is called anaerobic respiration, and it mostly occurs in yeast, bacteria and muscles of living organisms under certain conditions. Aerobic respiration, it is contrary to this anaerobic. where high energy is yielded or more energy is yielded due to complete breakdown of food materials. Why this complete breakdown of food materials is taking place? Because of high supply of oxygen. So in the presence of oxygen, if respiration occurs, that is called aerobic respiration. So example, all living cells. Is this respiration is carried out by any special organ systems in our body? Like we have digestive system to undergo digestion process. Is there any special system for exchange of gases or breathing or ventilation? Yes, of course, it is nothing but respiratory system. So we'll discuss the respiratory system. And this respiratory system or respiratory organs is not similar in all the organisms. That is because it probably due to their phylogenetic aspects or history in the evolution or their habitat of living, whatever it is. So they have to adopt to the environmental conditions for better survival. That's why different organisms have different means of respiration and different development of the respiratory organs. Let us see some of the examples and different respiratory organs in different organisms. And students, this is very important for your need purpose. For example, in protozoans like amoeba, euglena, paramecium or unicellular organisms, etc. And in some lower invertebrates like sponges, cnidarians and flatworms. All these things you have come across in your first year itself in the animal diversity 1, which deals with invertebrate phyla. Invertebrate phyla you have studied codiferans, cnidarians or coelenterates or platyhelminths, etc. So in protozoans and lower invertebrates like sponges, cnidarians and flatworms, the means of respiration or process of respiration occurs by simple diffusion. In earthworms, the respiratory organ is mostly gaseous exchange occurs through general moist body wall, whereas in insects, trachea are the respiratory organs, whereas in spider and scorpion, book lungs. You please note down all these things. I'll repeat again. In protozoans and lower invertebrates like sponges, cnidarians and flatworms, diffusion is a process of gas exchange. Means gas exchange occurs by simple diffusion. Whereas in earthworm, moist body wall or general body surface is a means of respiration. In insects, trachea. Spider and scorpion, book lungs are the respiratory organs. In aquatic arthropods and mollusks, best example I can give you the snail. So in aquatic arthropods and mollusks, gills are the respiratory organs. Coming to vertebrates. Till now we have discussed invertebrates, and coming to vertebrate respiratory organs, fishes have gills as a respiratory organs, and larvae of amphibians also respire with the help of gills, whereas adult amphibians like frogs, they respire through moist skin, lungs as well as buccopharyngeal lining. And in reptiles, aves and mammals. Aves are nothing but birds. So in the phylum class Reptilia, aves and Mammalia, lungs are the respiratory organs. Types of respirations. It's just a recap for you, dear children, because we have seen different respiratory organs in different organisms. So if respiration occurs through general body surface or skin, and the process is called cutaneous respiration. If respiration occurs through trachea, that is called tracheal respiration. Means just now we have seen the example earthworm. In earthworm, if the respiration occurs through skin, that is called cutaneous respiration. Whereas in insects, tracheal respiration occurs. In larvae of amphibians, fishes, etc., or in some mollusks, if respiration occurs through gills, that is called branchial respiration. If respiration occurs through lungs, that is called pulmonary respiration. And in frogs, at certain conditions, when they are not completely present in water or not completely present on the terrestrial medium, oftenly they undergo special means of respiration, that is buccopharyngeal respiration in frogs. So that buccopharyngeal respiration occurs through buccopharyngeal line. Okay, if respiration occurs through skin, that is cutaneous respiration. If it occurs through trachea, called tracheal respiration. If it occurs through gills, that is called bronchial respiration. And if it occurs through lungs, it is pulmonary respiration. And last but not least, if it occurs through buccopharyngeal lining, then that is called buccopharyngeal respiration, which is seen in frogs. So let's have a look over in each and every mechanism of respiration. In cutaneous respiration, if any organism is uh, tends to undergo cutaneous respiration, they should have a condition. So what is that condition? Their body wall must be kept moist always. They should keep their body surface moist. Moist means more amount of water with slimy substance which is secreted on the surface of water, surface of the body. So what is the reason for keeping their skin moist? As the atmospheric oxygen which is present in the atmosphere, it dissolves easily present in the water on the body surface, and eventually it diffuses into the blood circulation, where the body wall is highly vascular, means highly supplied with the blood vessels and capillaries. And in turn, the carbon dioxide which is formed after metabolic activities will be released by the same means. Means oxygen diffuses through the skin into the blood, and carbon dioxide is eliminated out through the moist skin or general body surface, which is called cutaneous respiration. And in insects, respiration is called tracheal respiration. Already you have seen in your first year type study, that is Periplaneta americana, which is commonly called cockroach. It has special structures called spiracles and trachea, tracheal branches. That entire system is called tracheal system. So during inhalation, the spiracles which are present, through the spiracles, the air enter into the branches of trachea, and finally that is reaching to each and every cell of the tissues. Carbon dioxide which is formed inside the tissue is eliminated out through the spiracles itself. But different animals have different spiracles positioned in their body. So you have seen 10 pairs of spiracles present in cockroach. Next, branchial respiration. Have you ever observed fishes in the aquarium? Yes. What they will do? Continuously they open and closes their mouths. So what is the reason for opening and closing of their mouths continuously? Because fishes depend on dissolved oxygen present in the water for respiration. And then you can observe a side on each side, either side of their head, they have some openings and closing. Cap-like structures are present called opercula. So when the mouth closes, operculum opens. When the fish opens its mouth, operculum closes. Means when fishes are drinking water, when they open their mouth for drinking water, operculum gets closed. This operculum is nothing but cap which is protecting the gills on either side of the head. Getting my point? Means when fishes drinks water, immediately that water is moving through the vascularized gill lamellae. So vascularized, whenever you get the term vascular or vascularized, they are highly supplied with the water. Sorry, highly supplied with the capillaries or blood circulation. So as the water is moving through the gill lamellae, oxygen present in dissolved condition easily diffuses into the blood circulation, and carbon dioxide that is there in the gills is diffused back into the water, and that is eliminated out by opening of the lamella, opercula of gill lamella. Means by closing and opening of the mouth and simultaneous closing and opening of the gill lamellae, fishes respire by drinking water. So this, the process of respiration or gas exchange that occurs through the gills is called branchial respiration. And third one is buccopharyngeal respiration. It is seen in frogs under certain conditions when they are not completely submerged in water or not completely on the terrestrial medium. They go for a special mechanism of respiration, that is buccopharyngeal respiration. This buccopharyngeal respiration also involves to process inspiration or inhalation and expiration or breathe out. During inhalation, the nostrils of the nose get or snout open, and the operculum buccopharyngeal lining here, this will raises down, means it expands. Once the buccopharyngeal lining expands, air which is entering through the nostril, complete buccopharyngeal lining is filled with the air. Then immediately nostrils gets closed and the lower lining of the buccopharyngeal cavity, it raises up or it contracts. Once it contracts, immediately air is pushing back into the lungs by the opening of the glottis. And then during expiration, the lungs get contract, means a pressure exerts on the lungs. Immediately as the pressure exerts on the lungs, the glottis gets open and pharynx, buccopharyngeal lining gets extended again. It expands, which is filled with the air that is having carbon dioxide. And finally, the nostrils get open, glottis closed. You please remember that during inhalation, nostrils open, and when air is entering from buccopharyngeal cavity into the lungs, the glottis opens and nostrils gets closed. During expiration, glottis gets closed and nostrils open for elimination of the air that contains carbon dioxide. And the very important is pulmonary respiration. Pulmonary respiration is nothing but the respiration that occurs through lungs. So let us discuss human respiratory system. So in human beings, which are nothing but the mammals, respiration occurs with the help of lungs, and not only the lungs are taking part in respiration, it has some other connections or different parts. So the parts that are involving in respiration in human beings, it's together called respiratory system. So human beings, respiratory system consists of nose. Do you have nose, children? Yes. What is nose? Nose is nothing but anterior projection of the nasal chamber. So there is nasal chamber which is protruding out. So that outward anterior projection of the nasal chamber is called nose, which is having openings called nostrils. So first and foremost structures of respiratory system in human beings are nostrils, which are again two types, external nostrils and internal nostrils. The nostrils, nasal chambers, pharynx. In that one portion of the pharynx, that is nasopharynx, is playing an important role. Larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, and finally the lungs. These are the different parts that are present in the respiratory system. Already I did with the definition of system in the earlier sessions. System is nothing but group of organs that perform a specific function. You please remember this. System is group of organs that perform a specific function. Here these organs are forming a group which are performing a specific function, that is exchange of gases or respiration. Now let's see the position of different structures in human respiratory system. First, nostril, you can see this is the external nostril, and inside we have one more aperture called internal nostrils. Then nasal chamber, external nostrils leads into nasal chamber. Nasal chamber, through the internal nostrils, they open into pharynx. And again we have came across with the epiglottis. I'll discuss this in the later discussion part. This is also playing an important role in respiration. Next, larynx. Larynx is the anterior part of the trachea. Then trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, lungs. So these are the important structures or parts present in the respiratory system. But these structures are not alone helping in exchange or breathe in, breathe out without a special structure that is none other than diaphragm. Without the diaphragm, our lungs cannot play any role in exchange of gases. So first part is nostril. Already I told you nostrils are two types, external nostrils and internal nostril. You can see the openings of your nose which are communicating to the outer environment. And what is the position of external nostrils? You have two lips, one is upper lip and lower lip. Just above the upper lip we have one pair of external nostrils. And these, you must be very conscious with the number of nostrils. Number of external nostrils is one pair. Position, they are present or they open out above the upper lip. You can see in this image clearly, this is the upper lip, and above the upper lip we have one pair of nostrils which leads into long passages. If you put your finger into each and every nostril, that finger will move into or inside it, go through inside, and that chamber or passage is nothing but nasal chamber. These nasal chambers, each nasal chamber is divided into three parts: vestibular part, respiratory part and olfactory part. Again I'm coming back. We have two external nostrils. Each nostril leads into nasal chambers. Means we have one pair of nasal chambers. The two nasal chambers are separated by a vertical septum called nasal septum. So what is that septum called? Nasal septum, that separates two nasal chambers. And this each nasal chamber has three parts. One is vestibular part, second one is respiratory part, and innermost is the olfactory part. Vestibular part. How can we identify or differentiate this vestibular part? It is characterized by the presence of hair and sebaceous glands. So in this image you can see, and you can find small hair when you observe your nostrils with the help of a mirror. If you see your nostrils in the mirror, you find small hair. So that portion of the nasal chamber where hair is present is called vestibular part. What is the reason why we have such hair? And these are small stiff hair which are called vibrissae. That the term given to hair present in the nostril is vibrissae, and they help in trapping the dust particles and small insects that enter into the nasal chamber during inhalation. And if you observe your tip of the nose, immediately after getting up early in the morning, you find accumulation of some oil around the nostrils. That oil is nothing but sebum. Sebum is secreted by special glands called sebaceous glands. And not only around the nose or nostrils, we have that oil secretion on the skin surface of face, on the body surface, and also on the scalp. Except the palms and soles, we have all over the secretion of the sebum. What is the reason? Why we should have the secretions of sebum, or why we should have that sebaceous gland? Yes, very good. The sebum, which is secreting and which is spreading all over the surface of the body and also at the tip of the nose, that traps bacteria. Because we are directly exposing to the environment, some million of bacteria will attack on the surface. Whenever those bacteria will sit on our skin, the pH of the sebum is not at all suitable for growth or reproduction of the bacteria. So that's why the pH of oil or sebum that is secreted by our sebaceous glands kills or destroy or it stops or inhibits growth of bacteria. So the same thing, as we are inhaling, if any bacteria are present, those bacteria are killed by the sebum secreted by sebaceous glands, which is the first and foremost part of the nasal chamber called vestibular part. Second one, respiratory part. So whenever you observe while breathing in, when you take air into the nostrils or nose, you find some cooling area over here. Means the inhaled air gets cooled in the nose itself. Why? Because already we have body temperature that is 98.4 degree Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius. That is a normal temperature at which enzyme action will be normal. If we take air which is having temperature, that elevates body temperature if it not cool down in the nose itself. That's why this is a good creation of human beings. God has created beautifully. Inside the nose itself, we have an inbuilt air conditioner. So we have an AC inside the nose. That AC is nothing but respiratory part of the nasal chamber. So this respiratory part of the nasal chamber is the largest part of nasal chamber, which conditions the temperature of the inhaled air so that our body temperature also regulated. And here you can see the bony plates, twisted bony plates. Twisted means which have a curve. So three thin twisted bony plates in each nasal chamber of respiratory part. These three bony plates are called turbinals. Very important. I'll repeat again. There are three thin twisted bony plates present in the respiratory chamber or respiratory part of nasal chamber called turbinals, and they are also called concave. So what is other name given to turbinals? Concave. And last but not least, third portion of the nasal chamber is olfactory part. The olfactory part is lined by a special sensory epithelium called olfactory epithelium. What is the function? Olfactory epithelium detects quality of smell. Please make a note of this. Whenever you come across the term olfaction, olfaction is nothing but sense of smell, and this olfactory lining which we have in the anterior most part of this nasal chamber, the inner part of the nasal chamber, that olfactory epithelium helps in detection of quality of smell. Okay, I hope we have understood nasal chambers and nostrils very well. Next, move on to the next part. The next part of the respiratory system is pharynx. So pharynx is a common passage for air as well as food, because this pharynx is communicating with the nasal chambers as well as the buccal cavity or oral cavity. That's why this is called common passage for food and air. And this pharynx is having three regions: nasopharynx, oropharynx, and laryngopharynx. Nasopharynx is the first portion of the pharynx which is having communication with the nasal chamber. Means nasal chambers open into nasopharynx through a pair of internal nostrils. We have one pair of internal nostrils over here. Through the internal nostrils, nasal chambers open into nasopharynx. This nasopharynx leads into oropharynx. Oropharynx name itself is self-explanatory. The portion of the pharynx which has direct communication with the oral cavity. And oropharynx leads into laryngopharynx. Laryngopharynx is also self-explanatory, which has communication with the larynx, as well as it is also having communication with the esophagus, but mostly laryngopharynx is helping in diverting the inhaled air into the larynx. So which part of the pharynx is having major role in respiration? Nasopharynx, as it has direct communication with the nasal chambers. So here you can see the schematic representation. Nasal chambers through internal nostrils, they lead into nasopharynx. Nasopharynx leads into oropharynx, and through glottis and larynx, the oropharynx leads into laryngopharynx and finally into the trachea. Next is larynx. So larynx is a cartilaginous box, and this larynx function is to help production of sound. So as the larynx play an important role in production of sound, this is commonly called voice box. What is the common name of larynx? That is nothing but voice box. And wall of larynx is formed by total 9 cartilages. Students, you please remember this. Number of cartilages that are present in the wall of larynx are total 9. Among the 9 cartilages, some are unpaired or single cartilages and some are paired cartilages. So what are those 9 cartilages? Thyroid cartilage, cricoid cartilage, epiglottis, corniculate, or they are also called Santorini cartilages, arytenoids and cuneiform cartilages. So I have given you only 6 names here, then how can I say 9 cartilages? You come across here only 6 cartilages. Now thyroid 1, cricoid 2, epiglottis 3, corniculate 4, arytenoids 5 and cuneiform 6. How can I say 9? Based on their number. You can see here thyroid cartilage is unpaired, means single. Cricoid or cricoid is also unpaired. Epiglottis is unpaired. So 3 unpaired cartilages and 3 paired cartilages, means total 9 cartilages are forming the wall of larynx. What is this epiglottis? We have came across with this term many a times. Epiglottis is nothing but thin leaf-like elastic cartilaginous flap. Flap is nothing but lid which is closing and opening the glottis. So whenever we observe dorsal and ventral views of the larynx, this is the thyroid cartilage. You remember, among all the 9 cartilages, thyroid cartilage is the largest cartilage. And this thyroid cartilage is forming on the ventral and lateral portions of the larynx. It is incomplete dorsally, means on the dorsal side, we don't find any thyroid cartilage. It is forming on the ventral side as well as on the lateral sides of the larynx. And this is the largest cartilage. Next, a spherical cartilage is present called cricoid cartilage. And a leaf-like structure, epiglottis, which is an elastic flap. And here we can see, you can observe here the sky blue colored structures. One pair of triangular shaped cartilages called arytenoids. At the tip of the arytenoids, we have nodule-like cartilages. Whenever you get a question in the MCET or NEET, name the nodule-like cartilages that are articulating with the arytenoids. So the cartilages are nodule-like cartilages articulating with arytenoids are corniculate or Santorini cartilages. They are also called Santorini cartilage. So if you open your mouth very widely, you can find the projection of leaf-like structure in the throat, that is nothing but epiglottis. This hanging portion also, you know very well, this is uvula. Uvula is a hanging portion of the soft palate. This is quite different from the epiglottis. Epiglottis is projecting out from the throat to the upwards when you open your mouth widely, and you can observe your epiglottis in the throat region. And in men, you might have found some projections in the neck region here. So that prominent projection seen in men is nothing but Adam's apple. So what is Adam's apple? A projection at the front of the neck. Which cartilage is forming this Adam's apple? Only the thyroid cartilage. As the thyroid cartilage is pushing forward in men especially, that notch which is formed over here is called Adam's apple, that is formed by the thyroid cartilage of larynx. And why this larynx is called voice box? Till now we didn't discuss the special structures that are present in the larynx that help in sound production. They are nothing but vocal cords. We have 2 types of vocal cords, false vocal cords and true vocal cords. False vocal cords are only the mucous membranes. They are not at all helping in sound production. Whereas true vocal cords are yellow elastic fibers. They are made up of yellow elastic fibers, and they are connecting the thyroid cartilage with the arytenoids. Already you have seen position of thyroid and arytenoids in the previous images. So this is the thyroid cartilage we have on the front of the larynx, and arytenoids. Between thyroid and arytenoid, we have one pair of yellow elastic fibrous tissues, nothing but true vocal cords. And between the vocal cords and arytenoids, there is a triangular space called rima glottis. Very important for you people. Rima glottis is nothing but the space present between true vocal cords and the arytenoids. Here you have to mention the term true vocal cords. Just now I told you we have two types of vocal cords, false vocal cord and true vocal cords. False vocal cords, how can we identify? They are simply the mucous membranes, whereas true vocal cords are formed by yellow elastic fibers, and the space present between true vocal cords and the arytenoids is called rima glottis. And how can we differentiate? Why the females and males have different sounds? Why they have different voices? Because of the structural changes that are seen in males and females of the vocal cords. In males, vocal cords are thicker and longer, which produce low pitch voice. Whereas in females, vocal cords are short and thin, which produce high pitch voice. Please make sure that in males, vocal cords are thicker and longer, whereas in females, they are short. Let's have a look over this video, please. Okay, students, I hope you understood the position of different cartilages in the larynx. Next, coming to the next part of the respiratory system, that is trachea. Trachea is commonly called the windpipe. Where is this trachea is located? Right from the neck region. It is extending from right from the neck region, and slowly it is coming downwards and reaching to the mid space of the chest cavity. So that middle portion of the chest cavity is called mediastinum. Okay, so this is entering to the chest cavity, which is also called thoracic cavity, right from the neck region. So larynx leads into a long cartilaginous muscular tube called trachea. And this trachea is supported by C-shaped cartilaginous rings. C-shaped cartilaginous rings, which are incomplete dorsally like that of the thyroid cartilage. And internally, the trachea is lined by pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. So this word is very, very important for you people. Inside the trachea is lined by epithelium, special epithelium called pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. Pseudostratified. Stratified means which is forming layers. But here this epithelium is not forming layers, but it is giving an impression that it is forming layers. Why? Because the cells that are forming this epithelium are irregular in sizes. Means some cells are smaller in size and some are larger in size. Of course, this epithelium is a single celled epithelium. But the cell size or height of the size is varying. That's why due to different sizes of the cells, it is giving an impression that it is forming 2 to 3 layers. But exactly it is a single celled layer. That's why it is called pseudo-stratified. And as it is having cilia on the free surface of the cells, it is ciliated epithelium. Due to longer cells, it is columnar. Okay, pseudo-stratified ciliated columnar epithelium is lining the inner wall of trachea. So what is the use of these cilia? The cilia, by continuous beating of the cilia, the dust particles or foreign particles that enter into the trachea will be eliminated out. So here you can see the cross section of the trachea is showing or it is revealing the presence of C-shaped rings. So it is complete ventrally and incomplete dorsally. And here you can see the esophagus. The opening of the esophagus is called gullet and opening of trachea is called glottis. So this cross section is revealing the position of C-shaped rings, which is incomplete dorsally. Coming to ramification of the trachea or branches of trachea. So the trachea, after reaching the mid-thoracic cavity and at the position of fifth thoracic vertebra, please make a note of this. Once the trachea is reaching the position of the fifth thoracic vertebra in the thoracic cavity, it is dividing into two branches. So those two branches are together called primary bronchi. These primary bronchi further, each primary bronchus enter into its respective lung. After entering into its respective lung, the primary bronchus further divides into secondary bronchi and tertiary bronchi. The tertiary bronchi further ramify, they undergo further branching and producing slender branches of the bronchi called bronchioles. So those bronchioles are primary bronchioles, secondary bronchioles, tertiary bronchioles, terminal bronchioles and respiratory bronchioles. You please remember, bronchi are 3, bronchioles are 5. Okay, bronchi are primary bronchi, secondary bronchi and tertiary bronchi. Bronchioles are primary, secondary, tertiary, terminal and respiratory. And this entire ramification or entire branching right from trachea to the respiratory bronchi, it is looking like an inverted tree or inverted branches. So this entire system is called respiratory tree. this branching of trachea and bronchi together called respiratory tree. These respiratory bronchi, after entering within each and every lung, they again further divides into smaller branches called respiratory bronchioles, which further open into alveolar ducts, and alveolar ducts open into cluster of small cup-like structures called alveoli. So finally, what is the destination of the trachea? Trachea finally opens into small cluster of cup-like lobules called alveoli. This is a schematic representation of the respiratory tree. Trachea divides into primary bronchus, then secondary, tertiary bronchi. Tertiary bronchi further divides into 5 bronchioles, primary bronchioles, secondary, tertiary, terminal, and respiratory. Respiratory bronchioles open into alveolar ducts. Alveolar ducts further open into alveoli. So these alveoli are called pulmonary lobules. They are also called pulmonary lobules. Each pulmonary lobule of alveolus, what is the origin of the alveolus name means the pulmonary lobule is derived from the Latin word called alveolus. Alveolus means little cavity. And all alveoli are highly vascular, which are supplied to the capillaries, and they are one cell thick. The thickness of the alveolus is one cell thick, and also the capillaries are also one cell thick. The squamous epithelium of the alveolus, squamous epithelium of the pulmonary capillary, and their respective basement membranes together form a membrane or barrier called respiratory membrane for the exchange of gases. This is very, very important. This is also one of the conditions for transportation or exchange of gases. So exchange of gases depends on thickness of the membrane also. If the membrane is thick, respiratory membrane is thick, it is difficult for exchange of gases. That's why alveoli and pulmonary capillaries are forming a thin respiratory membrane with 3 layers. Please remember, number of layers present in respiratory membrane are 3. One is squamous epithelium of the alveolus, squamous epithelium or endothelium of the pulmonary capillary, and their basement membranes. Okay, the two basement membranes get fused to form a single basement membrane, and one is epithelium of the alveolus and other one is endothelium of the capillary. So total we have 3 layers in the respiratory membrane. Next, coming to the very important and principal organs, primary organs of respiration are lungs. So these are the primary organs of respiratory system in human beings. Not only in human beings, these lungs are also respiratory organs in certain fishes, few fishes and some snails. And in mammals and other vertebrates, the lungs are located near the backbone and either side of the heart. What is the position of lungs? They are present near the backbone or vertebral column and on either side of the lungs. Human lungs together weigh approximately 1.3 kilograms. And altogether, the airway system is nothing but right from trachea to the alveolar ducts. That airway system in both the lungs is approximately containing 2,400 kilometers long, and the pulmonary lobules or alveoli altogether in the lungs form 300 to 500 million. Lungs are divided into lobes. Lungs are divided into lobes. So right lung has 3 lobes and left lung is divided into 2 lobes. So total 5 lobes are present in the lungs. And these lungs, they occupy major portion of the thoracic cavity and they are protected in a special cage called rib cage. The rib cage is formed by dorsal vertebral column, ventral sternum and lateral 12 pairs of ribs. And on the lower side, diaphragm is also forming the closing, or it is also accommodating the chest cavity. The two lungs are covered by peritoneal layers. The two peritoneal layers that are protecting or covering the lungs are called pleura. Between these two pleura, there is a narrow space called pleural cavity filled with pleural fluid. That pleural fluid, it helps in reducing the friction on the lungs during breathing in or breathing out. So during the respiration process, if any friction occurs in the lungs, that results in collapsing of the lungs to protect from the collapsing of lungs and reducing the friction, this pleural fluid is playing a major role. It's coming to among the two layers, the outermost pleural layer is lining the chest cavity, whereas inner layer is lining the wall of lungs. This respiratory system has two regions, structurally as well as functionally. If you see the structural demarcation, the respiratory system is divided into two tracts, upper respiratory tract and lower respiratory tract. Upper respiratory tract starts from external nostrils and ends with anterior portion of the larynx. Students, please remember this. Upper respiratory tract starts with external nostril and ends with anterior portion of the larynx. Lower respiratory tract or lower airway system starts with lower portion of the larynx and it is ending with the alveoli or lungs. Functionally also, the respiratory system has two regions or two portions, conducting portion and respiratory portion. Conducting portion starts from external nostrils and ends with terminal bronchioles. Please very cautious about this. Structurally, the upper respiratory tract starts with external nostrils, no doubt, but it is ending with anterior portion of the larynx. Whereas conduction portion or conducting portion starts with external nostrils and ends with terminal bronchioles. We have 5 bronchioles: primary, secondary, tertiary, terminal and respiratory. So till terminal bronchioles right from external nostrils, this portion is called conducting portion, and alveolar ducts, respiratory ducts, alveolar ducts and alveolar together form respiratory portion. If we see the embryonic origin of respiratory system, the epithelium of the internal lining of the larynx, trachea, bronchi and lungs is entirely of endodermal in origin. The epithelial lining of larynx, trachea, bronchi and lungs is endodermal in origin, whereas cartilaginous, muscular and connective tissues of trachea and lungs are derived from splanchnic mesoderm. So two origins, endodermal origin and mesodermal origin we can see here. And in Latin word, lungs means the respiratory system in Latin language is called systema respiratorium. So what is the Latin name given to respiratory system? Systema respiratorium. Okay children, this is the time for recapitulation. So till now we have discussed definitions of respiration according to different authors and different respiratory organs in different animals, parts of respiratory system, lobes of lungs and different portions of airway system structurally and functionally. And this is a bibliography from where the sources I have collected images and videos. Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you, Prasanna madam. Madam?
Madam. Yes,
Madam, one in chat box, they were asking what is external respiration in the starting. I think it's not about external respiration, it is about the cutaneous respiration. Just clarify the doubt.
I did not understand. No? Sorry, I didn't.
Just explain again cutaneous respiration.
Shall I go back or simply I orally?
Yes, you can just simply, like you can say,
Okay.
what is
cutaneous respiration is the process of exchanging of gases through general body surface or through skin. If respiration occurs through skin, that is called cutaneous respiration. And the condition for cutaneous respiration, whether it is an amphibian or an earthworm, the skin must be moist always. So if gas exchange takes place through skin, that is called cutaneous respiration.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. See children, for cutaneous respiration, as ma'am told, like conditions are must. Like first thing is it should be very, very delicate. It should be very thin and high blood capillary connection should be there, and always it should be moist. Okay, madam, like in the chat box, they are very excited today and they are saying like today's class is good, very good.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay,
students.
ma'am. Thank you. I think like BPC children, like CEC children can come on because next we'll take a break for 2 minutes and economics webinar will start. Thank
Will
you,
I stop
children.
sharing, ma'am?